Hello and welcome to today's podcast. Today we will be conducting a research on how new teachers feel in Texas Tech and how it compares to older ones. We'll be seeing how, if they feel overwhelmed, how they feel about their new students, and just about the experience overall. We'll be interviewing two guests today. We'll be talking with Dr. Wegmann, who recently joined Texas Tech. It's his first semester here. We're going to discuss about his first impressions, challenges, and what's excited him about teaching here. And then we'll talk with Amy Faris, who's been teaching here for 5 years already. We're going to discuss her experience and just how she feels, compared to Dr. Wegmann. So let's get to it. Alright, so I'm here with Wegmann?
Wegmann,
Yeah, Dr. Wegmann. And he's been teaching history for how many years?
In total, this is my 13th, but this is my first semester here. So.
Yeah. Alright, so could you share a bit about yourself and what led you to join the Texas Tech this year?
Yeah, so I'm from New Orleans. I was born in Malta, grew up in New Orleans, went to grad school at LSU in Louisiana, and I got my first job at Loyola in New Orleans, where I was a lecturer for a year, and then I got my first tenure track job at Delta State University in Mississippi, and I stayed there for 8 years. I loved it. It was wonderful. A little bit remote. The town was 2 hours away from the nearest airport, so to catch a flight, you had to drive 2 hours. Pick up someone from the airport, it was a 4-hour round trip thing. So that kind of sucked. But I got on the job market because I was at a point in my career where I had achieved basically as much as what Delta State could provide me. It didn't provide me with research money. The idea of getting faculty development leave didn't exist there. And so I wanted to take a run at the R1 market. I taught 4-4, which is 4 classes a semester, when here it's 2-2. Honestly, at first, I didn't think I had a chance. Mm-hmm. Even when I applied to Texas Tech, I didn't think I'd get the job at all. I'm not even sure I'd get an interview. And it turns out I ended up getting the job, which is wild to think about. But DSU was going through major financial problems. Just at the end of last year, they cut the history major, so there's no more history major there. And so it was one of those things where I just didn't see a future there anymore. I ended up getting several jobs, and this is the one I took. So
that's great. I noticed you like challenges or like setting the bar higher.
It allows me to become the historian that I always felt I should be.
Yeah.
When I Delta State, I felt like I was stagnant. I had become stagnant.
Yeah. That makes sense. All right. So, what are your first impressions here on campus?
I didn't realize how beautiful campus was. Lots of birds.
Yeah.
An unbelievable amount of birds. but otherwise, other than that, it's a really gorgeous campus. I also didn't realize how enormous it was. Not just campus, but the number of students. It's unbelievable. She's about the same size. It's actually slightly smaller. But I wasn't used to seeing this number of students. And I just love it. I love how active everything is. And you can go anywhere on campus and you see people. And people are moving around and going to class. It makes me feel like I'm part of something. And I just absolutely love it. But it's somehow this enormous community. But it creates this relatively small feeling. It's very odd. I've never been to a place like this. At LSU, you almost felt like you were just kind of a member of a city. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Here, it's that size, but somehow you just don't get that feeling. It's more of a neighborhood.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. It's a 40,000 person neighborhood. What's interesting is the students are, even in our class, which is 270 person class. My biggest class at DSU was 35. Oh. Students in our class are more engaged than the students at DSU. And so I actually feel like I'm talking more specifically to students in a giant lecture hall than I did in a small classroom, which is not what I expected at all. I frankly expected it to feel like screaming into a dark cave, but I don't feel like that at all, which is wonderful. So yeah, I really, really enjoy it here. A lot.
Do you still get lost on campus? Or?
All the time. I dropped something off at HR today, and it took me 20 minutes to figure out even which direction to go to find this building. So it happens, but I just get to explore campus, get my steps in, right?
All right. Well, and coming to a new university must be exciting, but also challenging, right? So was there some? Oh, you talked about how this relation between big and
Yeah,
small
sure.
works, but was there something unexpected, like a challenge you?
I mean, strangely, it's working with, and it's not really from the student side, but working with TAs is something I haven't done since my first year teaching, because I taught as an adjunct at LSU after I graduated, and I have 6 TAs now, 3 for your class and then 3 for the other one.
Yep.
That's honestly like the biggest job shift, where I've never actually been asked to do that. Everything else is actually easier. Right. I don't do the grading. When at DSU, I did all the grading. I taught 4 classes a semester. Now I teach 2. I used to have 10 hours of office hours. Now I have to have 3. So my job's actually gotten significantly easier insofar as I have much more time to do my own work, which is great. But the most unexpected thing is, I mean, obviously the size, but that's kind of goes without saying. My class is a 15, 20-minute walk from my office when it used to be down the hall. But it's dealing with TAs. That's the weirdest actual change that in more than a decade of doing this, I actually don't have much experience with. So it's kind of specific, but honestly, that's really the only fundamental shift.
That makes sense. And they are trying to help you, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah. Well, and that's the thing. It's getting like expectations across while at the same time allowing them to have some autonomy in grading. Yet at the same time, they should be grading all based on the same kind of, standard criteria.
Yeah.
And that's really difficult to get them to work in tandem in timing so that you guys don't get like your midterms back a month late or something like that. Yet at the same time, making sure that like your TA doesn't grade you like more difficult than another TA grades, their 70 students.
Okay.
And that's particularly difficult when you don't really have a sample size, right? There's no way to really check all their work. Yeah.
Well, other than the size and how people interact here, could you describe how the culture differ from other places you've taught?
Yeah, the most notable one is Delta State. It's in Cleveland, Mississippi. It's about 3,000 students. So it's small, but it is kind of the centerpiece of the community, right? I mean, without that, the town wouldn't really exist.
Yeah.
And so it does have this rooted nature to it, where people identify it. People in town love Delta State and that kind of thing. But the level of school spirit here is astonishing compared to Delta State. It was kind of like a commuter school. Most students would leave on the weekends. So when you went on Friday afternoon, it was completely dead. Like no one was there. You could be in the office and not hear anyone speak for the entire weekend. When here, if we have a home game, there are 50,000 people on campus.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's at any given day, I'll be here until like 4 on a Friday. There are people walking down the hall, talking in the hall. If I go down the 2nd or 3rd floor, there are people getting out of class. And so it's like the activity of campus and the feeling of being a part of something important is much different. It's a different kind of version of that than at Delta State. And it's not just the size. It's like the dedication of it is really kind of jarring.
Yeah.
It's kind of similar to LSU. It's like it's a brand almost unto itself. It means something even to people who don't go here.
Yeah.
You see Texas Tech on literally every single car.
Yeah,
100 blocks south.
Yeah.
Like that kind of thing. In Mississippi, it was all Mississippi State or Ole Miss. Like even in the West, where we weren't anywhere near those universities, no one really cared about Delta State. They cared about which of the big like R1 schools you supported, like which football team you supported, kind of thing.
Have you been to any sports game or?
I tailgated on Saturday. That was a lot of fun. And I'm going to the basketball game tonight.
Yeah, I'm going to.
Yeah, sweet. There you go.
Oh yeah.
Good old Wyoming.
Well, starting fresh can lead to new goals, right? Have you gotten anything new that you're aspiring to, or you still focus?
I was tenured at Delta State, and I gave up tenure to get this job. And so I go up for tenure in 2 years. So obviously that's the next step, because they gave me 4 years credit, which is nice, because I already have 2 books and a bunch of articles. That's the obvious next step. But in reality, like I'm pretty confident I'll get tenure just because I've done it before. I'll do it again. Given the amount of resources and time that Tech has offered me, it allows me to write much, much more. At Delta State, it was very hard to find time to sit down and do my own work and research things and write, particularly something the size of a book. When here, I have all the time in the world, it feels like. And so that's the thing. It's just kind of continue on with my career. I'd like to jump more into international kind of circles. I'm kind of part of this early Americanist circle in France. I'd like to develop that a little bit more too, just so that it's not just, my scholarship becomes nationally known, but rather internationally known. But, that's for the next 10 years, as it were.
That's great. Well, as a writer, would you like to promote some of your books?
Yeah, I'm always willing to talk about my scholarship under all circumstances. My current book's on Liberia. I'm not going to get that one done anytime soon, just because it's kind of in the beginning stages. And then my other one, where'd it go? It's up there. First one, the second row. That's on New Orleans, and then my other one is over there. That's on French North America. That one's 4 years old. That one's 2 years old. So it's, I promoted them as best I could under the circumstances of my schedule as best I could. But I've been on the radio in Liberia. I've been on the radio in LA. I've done a bunch of talks around Europe and the United States. So whenever I get the chance, I do a lecture or something like that.
All right.
That's why I missed a week of our class, for example.
You went to Germany, right?
Germany and France, yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Looking back at your first few months, would you like to give some advice to new teachers who are looking to join TTU or?
Oh, yeah. I know that a lot of myself and my colleagues who teach at smaller schools kind of assume that two things, that your colleagues at a big school are only interested in their research, and so they're not very friendly. And that students don't care because these classes are huge. Mm-hmm. When what I've learned, and I would implore others who are coming from a smaller school to a bigger school, is to kind of leave that at the door, because it's not true at all, or at least here it isn't.
It's different, right?
Yeah, sure. But all my colleagues are unbelievably welcoming and friendly, and some of them are very good friends of mine. The other ones are not good friends simply because I haven't seen them very much, because there are 35 of us, right? And the students, even in the large survey, I've been amazed by, of course, there's a large percentage who seem not to care, but there aren't enough for me to feel like I'm talking to a wall. Mm-hmm. So I think a lot of people have misgivings about teaching a huge class because no one will care, when the reality is that enough care to make it so that every time I walk in, I start talking, I feel like I'm doing something. Mm-hmm. I actually feel like I have an audience, and it's wonderful. I love it. So it's one of those things where, I guess the advice would be, and I can only speak to here specifically, I guess, this isn't your typical giant school. It doesn't fit the mold of a bunch of random weirdo chalk-covered professors who don't care about the students and don't care about anyone else, and then students who just want to go and get drunk all the time, right? Students might still want to do that, but they're willing to come to class and actually listen too.
Yeah, that's true.
And I think that's, I think a fair trade-off for college. And I really appreciate that. Weirdly, this reminds me more of my undergrad institution, which is Spring Hill College, which is 1,200 students. But I don't know why, but it legitimately reminds me of the campus feel of there was much, much, much more similar to here than it was to Delta State, which is very odd. Right, because that was such a intimate community where I knew everybody I graduated with. When here you're graduating with 10,000 other students. It's impossible. But it feels like this university allows for a much more kind of nuanced social interaction than another humongous like UT or something, right? Which is almost too big to handle itself almost. I might be wrong, but it's that's just my perception, I suppose. That's what I would tell other faculty members who are coming in, that don't expect this just to be your standard R1 giant school where students don't care and your colleagues aren't friendly. It's quite the opposite. And you can actually be a teacher and a scholar here, which is nice. You don't have to choose between one or the other.
And coming from teaching smaller groups to big groups, did you feel scared or nervous?
Right before our first class, I was so nervous. Yeah. And I haven't been nervous for class in 10 years. But I didn't know what to expect. Right? It was one of those things where my biggest class before this was 295. That was at LSU in 2014. Right? So it's 10 years ago. Yeah. And so it was one of those things where I was younger then. You know what I mean? I was more in tune with what the kids today, as it were, And so I was worried that I'd walk in and it would just be a bunch of blank stares or people staring at their phones and not caring, which is tough, right? I mean, you can lecture to that, but after 10 minutes you feel like what am I even talking for? And it wasn't and so it was literally within 5 minutes. I'm like, oh, I've done this. This is the same as teaching. And so now I'm not remotely intimidated. I'm not nervous at all. I love it. I look forward to it.
That's cool.
And I was really surprised. I was surprised both by how quickly the nervousness faded away and how nervous I was. I wasn't really expecting. I was walking to class the first day. I'm like, I might mess this up. I
Yeah,
don't know
yeah.
what this is like, but it was literally within 5 minutes, or not even that, a minute. It was just,
Can click.
yeah, it was just like muscle memory at a certain
Mm-hmm.
point.
That's great.
Yeah, and so I enjoy it. It's great fun.
Do you have any last messages or?
I mean, to students, never give up, always get up, and realize that education is liberty.
Yeah. All right. Thank you very much. So, I'm here with my second guest. Her name is Amy Faris. She's been a teacher here in Texas Tech for 5 years, but she's been in the career for around 26. So, how do you feel today?
I feel very energetic about the students that I'm seeing this afternoon. I'm advising people on their final solo song projects for my class, and the interaction with students is my favorite part of my job.
Okay, sounds very busy, but okay. So, take us back to when you first started here. What was it like, and what were your first impressions?
Okay, so it was a little weird for me because I actually attended college here. So my first time in this building was probably as a child, when I would attend recitals in the building. In high school, I attended piano lessons in this building, and then I started college here and have many, many memories from that time period, and everything still pretty much looks the same as it did when I was a student. When I first began my job here, though, it was fall of 2020. We were in the height of COVID. No one was around the building. Everyone else was teaching from home, and I had to teach face-to-face and online. So I started face-to-face, and the very first week I taught, a student got COVID.
Oh,
And I had to overnight learn how to conduct a Zoom class and transfer all of my classes over to Zoom. And it was the first class in the whole music building. So that was exciting. Yeah, so I kind of started like in a vacuum, like an island. There was no one around me. I was floating and didn't really know what I was doing. I was just writing lessons and teaching them.
that sounds scary.
It was.
What have been some of the biggest changes you've noticed?
Absolutely. So the administration of the music department has changed hands many times. Since I've been here, there have been 3 or 4 different heads of the department. So like we're changing to a new boss over the whole department. So that's been interesting because rules change and the direction the school is going changes. I would say we are way more future focused than we used to be. We are actually trying to be in this century now, and we're trying to incorporate more technology. There are even classes now on working with a DAW and production, and those classes did not exist. When I was a student here, it was very classical music performance focused, and commercial music was very much frowned upon. It was definitely the ugly stepchild.
When the boss changes, do you think it really changes the dynamics, or it just
Absolutely.
really?
Very much. Yes. Yes. So the first boss we had was not even from our department. She was from the art building. The lady who initially hired me. And she hired me because I had taught her daughter piano. And she knew I was a songwriter. So I was terrified to take the job, having taught only private lessons. But I was saying yes to things that scared me, so I said, sure, I'll do it. The boss the next year hired me on full time. She was a lovely, lovely person. And then we had the boss we have now, and he's young. He's the youngest person, I believe, in our building to have a doctorate, to have gotten his doctorate. And he is changing everything. I might add, most of it is for the better.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you've been here for 5 years, and it seems like you've been through a lot. So, what has kept you so motivated to stay here for these 5 years?
It's really the most fun job I've ever had. It's very fulfilling, and as I said earlier, it's about the relationships that I build with students. And I hear from students who took my class in 2020 and 2021. And I love to still be part of their lives. I love to hear the music that they're continuing to create. I love it when my students release music into the world. I just find interacting with college students really inspiring to my own work. It keeps me exposed to new music that I probably wouldn't hear.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, and based on your experience, what advice would you give to new teachers joining Texas Tech this new year or next year?
I would say take every opportunity you can to connect with other teachers, especially those who are experienced in your department, because you'll learn so many things. For instance, I never knew we had a supply closet in this school that I could get all my supplies from till 2 weeks ago. And it's my 5th year.
Okay.
So talk to everyone you see. Be kind to your colleagues. Be helpful. If you see that somebody needs something, offer to help.
Mm-hmm.
Someone did that for me actually in my first semester here. And it was so valuable to know that someone cared. So, yeah, seek out the advice of older teachers who've been doing it for a while.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
people here is usually very friendly, right, compared to
yes.
overseas. So,
Yes.
yeah. So in what ways do you feel you have grown or changed as a teacher?
There are so many. So when I came into this job, I really, really hated public speaking. I would only do it when I put on recitals for my piano students and had to introduce each student. And I hated it very much, and I dreaded it. And I wouldn't even speak on stage when my own band played.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I would make our singer say things because it came really easily to her. My confidence has grown by leaps and bounds because I have to get up in front of people and talk all the time now. And sometimes I actually find I enjoy it, which that's been a revelation. I did not expect that.
Well, I think for an introvert, when you get to speak and then you see it's not that bad, maybe it's kind of rewarding. Could it be?
It's extremely rewarding.
Yeah.
It really is. I go home so many nights smiling as I drive home. I really do. Things just tend to happen almost every day that I'm here that just make me really grateful to have this job.
Okay. I know it's only been 5 years, but how would you say the experience from starting here today would be different from 5 years ago? Maybe this is regarding COVID?
Mm-hmm. It's extremely different. So we don't have to wear masks anymore
Yeah.
every day. That was kind of a pain, especially when you're trying to get to know people in your class and all you can see is like their eyes, right? People look so different when their mouths are visible. And I know that sounds strange, but it's very true. You don't get the character of a face without seeing,
Yeah,
the
that
lower
makes sense.
Otherwise, things have changed way for I'm now on a committee that we're kind of coming up with a new direction for the School of Music, where we are increasing our commercial music department, which means that we are broadening our outlook to make sure that we're not just classical focused,
Mm-hmm.
that we're encompassing a bunch of different styles of music that, people actually listen to.
Okay.
And I'm on the forefront of that, and I love that.
That's great. Do you have any last messages or advices for?
Create goodwill whenever and wherever you can.
Okay. And would you like to talk about your band?
Oh.
Promote yourself?
I have a trio named Scabaret, and it's me and the former viola professor here, Kimberly Spar, and Hannah Jackson on vocals. I play piano, and I write all the material. It's
I'm
very
gonna
fun.
put the name on the description so you can look it up.
Our album on Spotify is called Hot House Flower.
And I will put a link to that too.
Well, thank you.
Thank you very much for your time, and I hope you be happy.
Thank you.
Alright, so that was Dr. Wegmann and Amy Faris. They were both very interesting people to talk with, and in the comparison we could see that they actually share more similarities, even though Amy has been teaching here for 5 years already. For her, every day is still a new day. She literally just found out about like a supply closet a few weeks ago, and that's pretty funny to see. And Dr. Wegmann, who just got here, is also very excited about the school and looking forward to his works and everything. It's actually surprising to see how they are more similar than different. Thank you very much for your time, and see you.